Gaila Kasla Gigyakwe. Gaila Kasla Nashnamuk. Ninamuk. Nugum Sisa Holas. Gayuklan Lacha Muskamag Zawadino, Glu Danakta, Glu Liǧўiłdax. Yakat Richland Quatnala. Olak and Olak Ela Ekinoke Lakus Ilak Yachen. Leman Olak Ela Mulasans Gache na Yak Echeda. Lachwa Iknasha Kyokwa. Gaila Casa Lachus Awinagwisasa Lakwangan. Awinagwisasa Esquima Glusongis. Greetings, chiefs. Welcome to all you relatives and friends. My name is Sisa Choles. My English name is Jason Wilson, and I am honored to be asked to speak on behalf of our Liǧwiąłdax chiefs this evening. I am very honored to be here and glad to have been invited to take part in what our chiefs have chosen to do this evening. I'm truly grateful to be gathered here in this beautiful building here of our museum and acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and the Esquimalt peoples. Mula noche ilak socha apigi klasagikime sasa Liǧwiąłdax. Giachme gens ilanam sa Liǧwiąłdax. My heart is glad that we have been invited here by our Liģўiłdax chiefs, and we be invited as part of our united Liģўiłdax people. So I would like to invite Terry Bernard, the Songhees elder, and she is going to do a blessing for us.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, relatives. Good evening, friends. Aisquecho, as the Duchy or Terry. My late mother was Janet Dick. The late Skip Dick and Butch Dick are my maternal uncles, whom I not only love and admire, but have inspired me to start this journey, sorry, that I am on. To the other relations that I see, I'd like to say Qantas Konalahela. On behalf of my family and myself, we welcome each and every one of you here. Welcome to Victoria. Welcome to the Royal BC Museum. Welcome to the lands of Lekwungen people. We are a joint nation of Songhees and Esquimalt. We were one before treaties and borders. At this time, I'd like to thank everybody here for taking this time to follow culture protocols on our lands. I am new at finding my voice, but I know this work needs to be done. Asiyam Nachalata, as the Duchy or Terry, Chatla Sanet Lekwungen, Heichka Kwansla Atla, Heichka Kwansla Tachot, and Alanukat Lekwungen. I dedicate this evening to my late Uncle Skip, who passed away Friday. And I'd like to thank you and everybody for your prayers and your hugs. Heichka Siyam.
So to acknowledge the passing of Skip Dick, and as well as other people within our own LiģɁiłdax people and extended people of our Kwakwaka'wakw people, we did want to do what we call kitlisha. We want to shake off the sorrow that we carry so that we can uplift our hearts for the time that we're here for the business that we're doing for our LiģŁiłdax chiefs. Awigya ninogat.
we call that kids leaf, so you're shaking off your sorrow, and we're always taught to recognize people that are in mourning, even if the ones that are doing the hosting and the work aren't. And there's a lot of death amongst our people, and especially to recognize Skip Dick, who the people of this land come from and cherish. I decided to say that I was a little boy when he used to be the coach and the trainer for the T-Birds, and he was just an uncle to us. You know, he was so loving, and I just remembered his happiness, and he emulated love and acceptance. Yeah, I just wanted to say that's for you as well. And it's just so we can put our mornings a little bit aside for a while, so we can take care of what we need to take care of. If you want to pick your morning up after, that's okay too, but sometimes in life we have to take care of business. And the whole theme of what I was hearing in the Chiefs meeting is that we are all united here as folks, and we're trying to come to some sort of wonderful core center where we can be one together. And I have to talk about this song, come from the Wei Kum people that came through marriage. We're one with them too. So I just saw you across there and said, I have to say something about that. And that song came through marriage to our people from the Wei Kum. So we're stretching further north and talking about this, what we're seeking here is unity amongst our people. Because the coast isn't that big. We are all really connected. So that's all I have to say now.
Just wanted to quickly speak about what you've just witnessed here. This is what we call kamkamplitla in our language. We're spreading of the sacred eagle down to bless and cleanse the floor so that we can continue on in a good way with what we're doing here today. And we'll continue that here as well. Our women are held in high esteem amongst our peoples. Of course, they are our life givers, but high-ranking women were sought after in marriage to help strengthen our different tribes amongst our peoples. And women hold great power amongst our people, and we wish to recognize that as the ladies come out and continue to cleanse the floor with what we call Kwakwaka'wakw, a ladies' dance. And the song that our Nino God will be singing is one that was brought out about 9 or so years ago. My great-great-grandfather, Chief Billy Asu, had the foresight to record many songs with Dr. Ida Halpern many, many years ago in the early 1940s. And this is one of the songs that was preserved. I believe he recorded about 75 or so songs, if I remember. And this song belongs to Chief Patty Gray of the Wei Wai Kum people.
Ho!
So the song that was sang, as I mentioned, belonged to Chief Patty Gray, and the type of dance that the ladies will call Liģўiłdax. It's a professional women's dance, and these are one of the few dances that the women will end the dance, the song on the floor, before, and then exit after the song is finished. The manuk yalaban sina dasa, gyache no glagloch bas, glich salap pat maya chalap at glu huklila pat. We're ready to start the reason that we have been invited here. We've come to stand together, to give advice, to respect one another, and to listen to one another. So I wanted to quickly hand the podium over to Chris Roberts, the Chief Counselor for the Wei Wai Kum Nation, to speak a little bit more on what we're doing here this evening.
Gaila Kessler, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking all of the Kwakwaka'wakw chiefs that have answered this invitation that Wei Wai Kum has put out to come and stand with us to deliver a very important message that we're here to deliver today. I often get compliments of speaking clearly from the heart and stuff like that, but there's so much to cover in a short period of time. I am going to take some pauses and refer to my notes here today, of which some are on my phone, so I apologize in advance for breaking stride. Thank you very much to Terry, the elder from Songhees, for welcoming us to the territory. And it can't be said enough to want to repeat how thankful and grateful we are to be able to host this gathering on Lekwanga territory. I'm fortunate to have spent years of my university education down here and to make connections and have family with those nations as well. So I wanted to acknowledge that. So again, Gaila Kasa to all of our Kwakwaka'wakw chiefs, all the hereditary chiefs that have answered the call and the invitation. I'd like to thank the elected councilors and elected chiefs of the nations that you represent for coming here today. Members of the Legislative Assembly that have answered the call to come and sit with us today. I just wanted to highlight that we do have our member of the Legislative Assembly from our riding on the North Island, Anna Kindi, is here, so thank you for joining us. And Conservative Party leader Trevor Halford, as well as Rosalind Bird, Donegal Wilson, and Brennan Day. I understand that Leah Warbus is going to be joining, but she's going to be slightly delayed. And I apologize if I haven't acknowledged anyone else. But as I bring this up, and I think it was later on in my notes, but it is with a lot of disappointment that we received notice from the Premier and Minister Spencer Shanja Herbert that they would not be attending tonight. We didn't receive really any explanation for that, and it's beyond disappointing, really. It's a sign of disrespect. We've invited our chiefs from far away on this coast that you've heard our speakers say isn't that big of a coast. We're strongly connected. And the message that we have to deliver is an important one, and so hopefully it will be carried forward and they'll be able to hear it. So we open today with in a proper way with a blessing, with a ladies' dance, which our speaker has spoken to the meaning and significance of that, and with our chiefs present. So this is intentional. It reflects who we are as Liģўiłdax people and how we conduct ourselves under our traditional laws. So today's gathering is very intentional to represent ceremony, cultural practices, our traditional governance, and our laws. It's about affirming our territories. It's about speaking to our laws and to ensure our voices are clearly understood before decisions are made. Now, this day was meant to take place at Wahwadithla, Mungo Martin House, right beside us here. And just speaking to that house, of when it was built in 1952 and what it represents, that there's things that were carried forward, the teachings, the laws, and the responsibilities of our ancestors through the place and what it is meant to represent. It stands as a living expression of Kwakwaka'wakw governance, culture, and history. And we'd like to raise our hands with gratitude to Chief David Knox for allowing us to take place. But such as life, things happen. We learned as the passing of Elder Skip Dick, and out of respect for the family, we didn't want to make too much of a show and do things in that cultural house there. So we pivoted and we moved this into the museum location. And that is also about a demonstration of how we uphold these teachings. We uphold these laws of respect of one another as First Nations tribes and neighbors. And this is exactly why we're here today. So the purpose of being here today is to stand together as the Liǧʊiwdax nations. The Liǧʊiwdax nations, as you're going to hear further about, consist of 4 tribes: the Walaitsima, the Salmon River people, the Wei Wai Kum, and the Kwakwaka'wakw. And we have chiefs with standings from those tribes here with us today. We have speakers that can confirm our territories and our laws, and to speak directly to the decisions being advanced by the province. And you'll hear from them shortly right after me. They're going to speak to our territorial boundaries, our governance systems, and the legal foundations that have existed since time immemorial. So the context of the urgency for this gathering right now is the provincial actions that are before us. We understand that the Comox First Nation Treaty legislation is being brought forward into the House possibly tomorrow or this week, along with the amendments to the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, an act that we value, we cherish as a tool that is going to help us advance our self-determination to move reconciliation forward in a proper way with all First Nations in this province. But yet that is being reconsidered and put on pause of some sort of fears of overloading of the court systems and a bunch of other stuff that the media has done a great job covering, so you can consume yourself with that to understand the issues that we have as First Nations across this province with pushing pause on DRIPA. Now, it's kind of odd in that, I don't know, is it ironic? We're asking for them to push pause on the ratification of the treaty, Comox Treaty process, so it seems to be in government's mind these days, so it shouldn't be too much of a stretch for them to consider doing that. We're asking them to make time and space for us to work with Comox so that we can resolve these unresolved issues of overlapping claims. These are very similar issues. They're not separate. They reflect a pattern of moving forward without meaningful consultation, of rushing things through. So the core message we want to deliver today is that we support reconciliation. We support the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. We do support modern treaties, but they have to be done properly. The process has to be followed. It cannot be done without resolving overlaps. It cannot happen at the expense of Liǧʊiwdax rights and title. And if this is how government thinks they're going to advance modern treaties, they're sorely mistaken. It is not going to create the type of certainty that they expect, they want, of what the whole purpose of modern-day treaties are. So today's agenda includes confirmation of our territory as Liǧʊiwdax people, what Indigenous law means, and that is critical. Because the decisions being made right now directly affect those territories, and they risk undermining those laws. So what we are seeing is that overlapping treaty areas covering close to 80% of Wei Wai Kum, Wei Wai Kum territory, or Liǧʊiwdax territory, consultation that has not met the standard required, and timelines being accelerated, and that is not reconciliation. It is not consistent with the honor of the Crown. And I spoke to one of our chiefs that couldn't be here tonight, and he speaks about honor. He said, where's the honor? Homiskanis, I spoke with him last night, and he said, where's the honor among us as Indigenous people to have these claims? I'm really tempted to go into this education around the treaty process and statement of intent maps and strength of claim stuff, but that's really diving into the details. The piece that's missing in these modern treaties, these forms of reconciliation, are the requirement, the proof that we've reconciled among ourselves with our neighbors. And without that piece there, it really achieves nothing. It's going to create more uncertainty. It drives Wei Wai Kum to take more drastic measures, explore our avenues, whether they be litigation, pursuing title recognition throughout our territory, and it throws things into an upheaval. It's been said that we cannot wait any longer from the Comox. We've been waiting 3 decades for the treaty process. Well, so have we, and we are not ready as a Wei Wai Kum people. We are not finished this work. We need to do this reconciliation work with our neighbors. We are working at bringing the traditional laws and governance and hereditary system into how we want to move forward in the future. So our call is for a pause and a reset. Many chiefs have said this already, and we're saying it here again today. The process both must pause so that nations can do the work together, overlaps can be resolved properly, and decisions can be made with integrity. It was very disappointing in the letter response we got for the invitation to this gathering and the request to slow down the ratification process of the Comox Treaty. The letter response we got was that it was unnecessary and inappropriate for them to do so because there is still time. Canada hasn't ratified yet. It's still not law yet. But we have lost faith and trust in the government's promises, broken time and time again. It started with we were notified that the Comox Treaty was getting ready for the final draft to be initialed. We said, please hold off on that because we don't feel like we've had even begun to do our consultation to have our issues addressed. We were notified that Comox was moving forward with a ratification vote last year. We said, can you please hold off on that because we have not had a chance to talk about our issues and have them resolved. We came down here last year and filed for an injunction hearing to stop the ratification vote. That was not successful. We learned by happenstance when we met at the legislature about a month ago over our own mandating issues and lack of progress made there, that the Comox Treaty, by the way, was on the agenda for the spring session. So this is what's happening here, is a small glimpse of what we had planned, and we will do. We will follow up in our own Guxi. It was with great deliberation among our chiefs to come down here out of our own territory and do this, because the message is going to be much longer than a couple-hour information session. To learn about our laws, our customs, our teachings, and what that means to us, it is still alive and well, and it needs to form part of our modern treaties going forward. And so we adjusted, we pivoted, and we came down here to remove any types of excuses. It's literally just walking across the street. The House resumes tomorrow morning. And again, very disappointing to see no members of the NDP government here. Because this is an opportunity to listen and hear from these chiefs of our systems of governance, of the impacts from the oppression and colonialism and the Residential Schools and Indian Act. But we are still here. These systems are still here. And we are working very hard to bring them back because that's what's upon us as far as a future that we can be proud of and look forward to for our children. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to go off script for one little thing because it's part of what I feel like is maybe my purpose and my role in this as I continue to learn. We can be a successful First Nation Indian band. Camel River Indian Band is successful by certain measures. We've got economic success, we've got economic diversity. We are lacking in our housing, I'll admit that, my members are the first to remind me, because we don't have enough land. We need to purchase land back. We've been fortunate to have enough wealth to buy land back, add it as reserves so we can build more houses. We're doing quite well. Our unemployment rate isn't that high. A lot of our members are getting educated. That's fantastic. But what does it all mean to be a Liǧўiłdax person, to be a proud member of the Wei Wai Kum tribe? That every single member of our community has to know who they are, they have a name, they know where they fit in, and they're proud of that. That's the vision, and that's what these chiefs here represent, and that's what they uphold. And that's why we're going about this work in this way. It has to be accounted for in the work that we're doing. Liǧўiłdax, thank you very much.
For time immemorial, the ancestors of the Liǧŭiłdax and the greater Kwakwaka'wakw people as a whole have lived side by side and developed ways to sustain our society. One phenomenon that developed is the potlatch, which is a Chinook word meaning to give. and refers to Kwakwaka'wakw gatherings where gifts were distributed to the witnesses. The functions of these gatherings are often referred to as the potlatch system, whereby groups of Kwakwaka'wakw people interacted with each other in a social, political, and legal context. It is important to understand that potlatch was our form of government. It was more than just a redistribution of wealth. It was a place where laws were created and modified, where disputes were resolved and decisions were made. It was also a place where history was documented and relationships were built, reinforced, and strengthened. The potlatch system remains active today, but mainly for a ceremonial way. Unfortunately, the potlatch as a governing body was subverted by the Indian Act and the potlatch ban, and no longer serves as a platform for community governance. By the early 20th century, the Government of Canada had forcibly implemented the band council system upon our Kwakwaka'wakw people and all the peoples across this country. This imposition has created great political factions in our communities and generated new challenges for our people. This is problematic today because it creates a framework whereby Kwakwaka'wakw tribes are now in competition with each other over land and resources. So how did the Liǧʊiłdax conduct self-government? The governmental duties were divided amongst the Nashnamima of each of the tribes of the Liǧʊiłdax people. For instance, each Namima, or clan, for lack of a better word, had the responsibility for taking care of certain lands, rivers, and resources. In addition, each Namima also had certain roles in the community. For instance, one Namima was in charge of marriages, where another was in charge of deaths, etc. Ultimately, the Liǧʊiłdax Nashnamima worked together to take care of the day-to-day activities and provide our people with everything we needed, from food, timber, clothes, tools, canoes, etc. Subsequently, I don't want to take too much time on this. This isn't a history lesson. I will outline a little bit of our traditional governance structure below to provide some context on how self-governance operated, especially amongst our Liǧʊiłdax people. There were 4 essential components, are the Giukulut, the tribes itself, the Namima, the clans, the Dlachwai, standings for each of the different chief positions, and in some cases, a confederacy. And that's what the Liǧʊiłdax people were, a confederacy of 4 tribes. So some Giukulut who occupied adjoining tracts of territories of shared common history united and formed a larger group that can be referred to as a confederacy. Here, multiple Giukulut lived together during the wintertime, but lived separately during the spring and the summer seasons. Furthermore, these larger entities created distinct names to designate the unity. For example, was the Liǧʊiłdax who assembled at Cape Mudge. These groups achieved their formal structure because of their geographic proximity and strong historical kinship ties to one another. The Liģwigdaw or the Liģwigdaw were comprised of the following groups: the Wei Wai Kum, Walatsama, and the Quicha. These 4 groups came together and moved down south into the Campbell River and Cape Mudge area. And historically, these confederacies considered themselves one with each other. And there are other instances of confederacies amongst our Kwakwaka'wakw people as well, including the Kwakwaka'wakw, who assembled at Fort Rupert, and the Musqueam, who assembled at Guilford Island in Kinkham Inlet. So I'm going to hold my comments. I had many other notes on here, but I really wanted to hand things over to some of the chiefs that are here to speak about the legitimacy of our Liģwiłdax peoples and our territories that are Natlamima held on behalf of our tribes. This is how we validate ourselves, by having chiefs of other tribes validate what is being spoken about. So I wanted to invite Kwakwaka'wakw, Chief David Knox, who is the chief of the Mumptagila of the Kwakwaka'wakw tribe proper. Kwakwaka'wakw.
Gilikasla, it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be on Coast Salish territory today and for a while, because the relationship that we all have together is so important to collectively to talk about. But it wouldn't be right if I didn't do my timeline in history talk. And this staff I carry today is gifted by King George, governed by Captain James Douglas back in the day when Fort Rupert had Douglas Treaty signed in 1851. But collectively, because of Hudson's Bay, because a lot of the neighbor nations within Kwakwaka'wakw came to Fort Rupert because Hudson's Bay. So from doing research, there's other names, just not Fort Rupert nations, chiefs, that are on that treaty. Collectively, it's all the Kwakwaka'wakw that signed the Douglas Treaty back in 1851, signed twice. And to go further, go deeper, the more we dig, the more we are from the ocean and the land. In Port Hardy Bay, we're 10,000 years carbon dated. Outside of Wikunu, Top End of Culvert Island, 14,000. Recently, going up the Nimkish River, 14,500 years. That's over 700 generations that we're be kicking on this coastline collectively together. Our grease trails are everything. Our gleatna is everything. Our highest prize is to be a gleatna maker. You know, and there's so much to fathom about the reality about the pickle that we're in because of being colonized. For 200 years, we've been suppressed. The banning of the potlatch was 1844. Total misinterpretation for who we are as Indigenous people of this land. Our totem poles represent who we are, where we come from. The whole coast, from Alaska south, we believe in the sky, the land, the ocean, and the supernatural world. Those are our origin stories. Those origin stories are our laws. And the government has to listen to our origin stories because we come through time immemorial. And it's just weird to fathom the reality. But happy thoughts. You know, and there's just like so much. Like it's like, to me, Canada is like this big onion. Canada is so young, but look what happened in, 160 years or something like that. I'm bad at math, And there's like, how do we make wrong to make it right and still work together? And my message today is, I stand with the Liģwiłdax people. My mother's mother comes from Cam River, Granny Topsy, that married Big Louie and from Denoktuk. And my father, Peter Knox, comes from Kwakwaka'wakw, from Fort Rupert. And my great-grandfather, Mungo Martin, James Knox. It's unbelievable the history that we all have collectively together. Those grease trails were intermarriage trails also, because a chief would have many wives. He would go on one summer to go fishing. He would marry, bring home another high-ranking woman and get rights, entitlement to that stewardship, to that river, or mammals, or whales, or wildlife. So it's so important to really talk about the depthness of how we're all connected. It's the Indian Act that divided us. 1876 was the worst year ever for all Indigenous people under the Indian Act. They made us draw hard lines in the sand to pick one nation, but collectively, we're all connected, Nunwut as one. So we got to get back to our old tradition, our old ways. I mean, our youth is everything, our potlatching. We never own nothing. We're only the caretakers for the moment. Why we pass it on to the younger generation. It's just so important to embrace our youth, to embrace what elders we have left. it's like such hardship going on right now with all the deaths, and even with our young ones, the suicide, the alcoholism, those bad drugs. You know, it's such a shame. So how do we really get our youth more involved to really do everything what we're doing? And I'm going to belch out my land-based knowledge I've been working on collectively with a group of us, 4 different nations up in the northern tip. We've been working together. Kuskomu, Quatsino, I was on council for 2 years, so I really pushed for us to collectively sit down to resolve the overlapping territories, because some nations are in modern-day treaty process. For Rupert, we're not. We got an old historical pre-Confederation treaty. That's a Douglas Treaty in 1851. We're one of the first ones to ever get it. Hudson's Bay state claim to 90 acres in Fort Rupert. And then 3 years later, they found a better coal deposit in Nanuus. So they packed up, they sold the fort to Mr. Hunt, they married Mary Abbott's, and then they went to Nanuus. And that's why the southern nations have the other Douglas treaties. There's 14 Douglas treaties on this island, and my nation, our nation, we're the only ones that have the Douglas Treaty in the Kwakwaka'wakw nations. But like I told you, it's important to do the historical research and just to walk together, to lock arms, to make wrong, to make it right is everything in life right now. To educate, to make awareness, not to shame, not to blame, but how do we make it right? But I got to say, shame on you, government, for not being here. It's so important to do this collective work together. So like I say, I stand here today with the Liǧʊiłdax family of my mother's side in solidarity, supporting, locking arms, because there's 2 other nations in the Kwakwaka'wakw that are coming up to the same stage 6 modern-day treaty process. And shame on you, government. You know, they tell us it's our own eternal problem, yet no one comes to the table. And yet they accept the maps, which are done by consultants, not even us real Indians, or consultants that submit the maps in. And then they give referrals for logging and this. We're down to the last 1% of our oldest growth. We need to save what we have left. Our salmon, I'm so happy to hear our fish farming is almost out. 2029 is coming up really fast. You know, what a transition that's going to look like about economic development. And the sense of Aboriginal ecotourism. There's so many other different components, you know, and without our old growth, without our salmon, without our clams, it's another cultural genocide coming up to us right now, really ASAP. And I got to talk about climate change. It's so real talking about climate change. Our seasons are changing. That's why it's important to embrace all our youth to make them independent and no more codependent, relying on handouts from crumbs from the ugly government. So, you know, shame on the government again. But anyway, I don't want to be too long-winded. I got so much to talk about, but I think I nailed out some key points. And bottom line, let's call the province out. Let's make wrong to make it right. It's to work together as one. Niumwat, Gaelic-asla.
Kwakwaka'wakw, ik as the Wastamakos, Yikme. I'd like to invite Kemkoidi, Chief Wedley Speck, to come speak next. Wedley comes from the Giksum Namima of the Kwagyal. We got Gikme.
Gaelic-asla, Gigami. Nino Zadach, Liǧʊiłdax. I want to thank you, Chris, for the invitation to be here today, to come and to support you and your people and the work that you're about to do and are doing. I also I like the idea of how we approach things. We're following our ancient customs, honoring the place in which we're doing the work, the Lekwungen people, especially at a time of great loss. And the courage it took Terry to come and honor, we'll say, the obligations of the family to be here. Raise my hands to them and express that love. I was one of the original Thunderbirds in which Skip was our manager, and he was the person that helped us young people stay straight, clear about how, I remember we're here to play soccer, not just fool around. But I also just want to say what I saw today in honoring of the chiefs and the Eagle Down, and also will say the dance that we do in honoring the Gray family. You know, I want to also say that my really good friend and relative, Bradley Dick, his mom is Wei Wai Kum from the Gray family. And so they are experiencing that loss as well. So there's a Liģўiłdax connection and loss as well, you know, in that passing. And so it helps me to really acknowledge that we hear about those connections. You know, there was wonderful in our preparation and setting our minds straight before coming into this room was about making sure that when we talk about what we're going to talk about, that we do so in a way that helping each other remember that, you know, we hold the wisdom of each other. That was such a wonderful sharing, Mike, and all seaweed. You know, and I think those are the really important parts. And so many of you know I've spent probably 50 years studying our culture. And a lot of that culture is the Salishan culture, as well as the Liģўiłdax culture, as well as the Kwakwaka'wakw culture. You know, I came to know my grandmother, Nellie Cook, was Nellie Hamilton, and Nellie Hamilton's mother came from the Powell family of the Wei Wai Kum. Her father, George Hamilton, is connected, we'll say, to the Aixen people, but they are connected directly with the Gigglegum of Wolatsama. You know, that's our family, so our Moon family connection. And so learning about that, learning about those connections, I also learned about how important it is for the family of the Salmon River people to know why they're there, you know. Because I was told to say that when the Liģўiłdax moved into Salmon River, they married the daughter of the chief who was Hahamatzis. And that Hahamatzis group were Salishan. And when they came together, they actually changed their name to Hahamatzis for a while. And then after that, they went to Wolatsama. And so the big part of that story is that Hahamatzis isn't Kwakwala. It's actually Salish, and it means holy ones. And so the marriage went from the Gigglegum and to all the other Namima. And so every Salmon River family can claim connection, we'll say, to that territory. It's their territory too, because of that marriage. It lifted that tribe up, you know. And so people make a mistake when they say that you moved in and just took it. You know, that's not true. We have to be telling the truth. The truth is that that marriage lifted everybody and the marriages. And thanks for some of the teachings of people, we realize that how related we are, you know, how important that is, and not to be ashamed of where we come from. And, you know, I think the other part of it too is when we think about some of the people, like when I was learning about things, I'd interview Don, your grandfather, the old man Bill. And he used to tell me things, and one of the things he told me, he said, you know, we were married into your family from Tsakis. And he said that's where we got the very first Klasla, the old man Wamish. And he said that's how it came to the Liģўiłdax people, because of that marriage. And he said how important it was for us to know those connections through those stories, because it also talks about dance rites and history, right? So when we see the dances here, the song or the dances or the movements, all of that is telling us a story about something really important that we carry as Kwakwaka'wakw Liģўiłdax people, right? You know, so I really valued those teachings. You know, they meant a lot. And when I was doing more work, I discovered, we'll say, that my great-grandmother was connected to Lottie Price, you know, Glali Piniga, the old man Asu's, Charlie Asu's wife, eh? And how those connections, Hobble as well, how those connections, we'll say, went even to the Mamanilikala. Sam Charlie from the Mamanilgam clan of the Mamanilikala, that was his family. You know, and so when you look at those connections, they just reach everywhere to all the tribes, and how important that is, because it helps shape our relationships and how we feel and know about ourselves, right? So I spent lots of time doing that. And for our guest, I just want to share that because what we do is that our genealogy is really important to us. And in that genealogy comes the relationships that we need to know about in order for us to come to events like this today. And what we want to share with you is that what we're doing here today is demonstrating that we have a strict law that bids us to dance, to meet, to share, and to support. It's not random, right? It's there for a reason. And so when we do that, we're honoring where we come from, who we are, and why we are. And it gives us a sense of place and a sense of belonging. But more than anything, it roots us to having a cultural identity, a cultural connection, and also a place in which we have roles and responsibilities in it. You know, as chiefs, you know, it's not just a matter of sitting up here and, you know, talking smart. You know, what it is sometimes is that, you know, we have a family that we work with. And we heard my nephew here talk about the structure of a namima, how important that is, you know, for our chiefs to meet, to our matriarchs to meet, to our those in our families who are knowledge keepers to meet, everybody. It's not just one or two people, it's about everybody, right? And so when we do that work, and we show that work in preparations for feasting or potlatching, it's a reminder that our law is rooted in that whole process and how important that is. And, you know, and I just wanted to take a moment to say that on behalf of British Columbia, I want to welcome you here to the museum. I'm a vice president of People, Culture, and Reconciliation. And I'm beginning to think the beautiful nature of inviting people in and how my staff's going to have to clean this floor tomorrow. You know. But what it is that it's about, this is a place which we agree in our leadership that it tells us stories of all British Columbians. You know, it's a place in which when we put this together and we show and we have exhibits and everything, it's about what's real in this world of ours in British Columbia. And so sometime it'll be important to, in the documentation of this event, is to continue those stories and continue those discussions, whether it's in Wawadelikala across the way or back in the yard or wherever it's going to be. But it's important to document the stories and to be able to learn from those stories in a really meaningful and rich way. And so with that, I just want to say to the leaders, the hereditary chiefs, and our noble women from the Wei Wai Kum Discussion, and the Quaker, that you know, we're here with you. This is why I came. We got our own business for someday in the future, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to support you. We're family. What you have is important, and where you want to move forward with it is important, and we'll be there with you then too, you know. And knowing will say that because of those marriages and those connections, you know, I am connected to you in a really meaningful way. So I just want to say, Liǧʊiłdax. And thank you to our guests that, and you be able to take, we'll say, these stories and this experience to those that are meaningful, and that you can share this, and hopefully we'll say that you can influence, you know, those that be voting in the House, you know, and maybe through that discussion there will be that pause, you know. And to me, there's nothing wrong with a pause. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a meaningful conversation that allows us to arrive at a solution that's good for everybody.
They call up Wakawidi, Chief William Wasden Jr., who is the head of the Gilgum of the Namkis.
Yeah, I just called one of my fellow chiefs up. He's from the Chichas, Wallace. I'm not much of a speaker, but I was invited to come, and I thought it was really important. I've spent a lot of time with Liǧʊiłdax people, and I have a lot of love and respect for all of you. in my work, I was able to see a ledger by a guy called Major Dick, who was one of the leaders of the Wei Wai Kum people. And all of those ledgers, what they are, is they're talking about the standings of people amongst the clans and the different clans amongst the tribes. And all of those clans are connected to territories. And they don't go one without the other. You have to have those territories in order to have these positionings amongst your people. And it was very intact. And these are the things that I think a lot of our people need to unify to start looking at these histories together. And we also be able to look at, there was a thing called the Royal Commission done, and there was also like land claims done in about the 1880s. And you can Google it online. And I was looking at it, and those people weren't overlapping their boundaries, those chiefs. They were groomed to be chiefs, and they knew their territories, and they had the respect for other tribes and other chieftains and other noble people. So I think as Kwakwaka'wakw people, what we keep using the word is that we come together to sit down with our Nino, the ones that are able to understand these things, to be able to look at it and say, this is what they claimed in the 1880s. This is what was claimed in the Royal Commission, 1914, around there. And like I said, start to work together, and the government has to be included at some level, because I don't really think they know what our people know. So, and I want to say thank you for actually being here, the ones that showed up. It is disheartening, you know. We're trying to basically keep our people together and unified, and that treaty process has done a really good of dividing our people. Our tribe was into it up until a certain point. We realized it was a no-win situation, so we got out. And so we just want to sit here in a good way with you. And thank you for coming, the ones that did show up. And I just want to look at my Moachat relative, Kwakwaka'wakw. This is a classic example. Do you want to stand up, brother? You're part of our Numgris too. His name, Kwakwaka'wakw, comes from us. They're Moachat, and the Numgris have been married for a long time. And we actually had an overlap boundary that went on. So our tribes got together, and then they asked the non-Numgris and the non-Moachat to step outside of the room, and that little overlapping dispute was settled really fast out of respect for each other. And then when we look at each other, the Moachats are half Numgris, and we're half Moachat from the intermarriages. We would never say no to them when they want to come over the mountain to access our resources, because they're our family too. So we need to start thinking like this again with putting those lines down. And I think there's a lot of people that are untaught about our ways, because our people weren't about me. It was about what are we going to leave behind for the next generations? That's all I've ever been taught. What are you going to contribute and leave behind? So I just wanted to say not too much, because I know we're in a time frame here, but I really honor you people that did come. Thank you. You know, you're hearing us in a good way, and we talked at the meeting that we're not coming out here to slam anybody or whatever. We're just trying to get our point across that there is a different story going on here, and we need to come and respect our Liģўiłdax relatives. And I was taught by one of my great-grandmothers, the Kwakwaka'wakw and the Roberts are my relatives, so I have to come and stand with them. That's just the way it rolls. But it's thank you all for coming and being a part of this, because it's not easy to talk about, but our people are very, transparent people. When the Numgris used to vote on things in our village, they told me they'd all be outside their big houses, and they'd be Liģўiłdax, put their hands up, and you knew exactly who was with you and who was against you. So we were never hiding around behind little voting boxes and stuff like that. And, I'm going to vote for you, pal, I really care for you. And the big landslide the other way, you know. So time for us to get back to that, transparency. Why can't we just sit down and start talking to each other? That's how our old people called it, when you get together and speak with wisdom. And our mandate was always about our people, taking care of your people. So way to go, Chris. I really enjoyed listening to your bus tour today. No, you really speak awesome, and it's, you speak from the heart, and you truly do. And I just honored to be here. I don't want to take too much time, and thank you for honoring me enough to ask me to speak. I was going to speak a little bit more about ancestral stuff, but that's your story to tell. I've heard the stories, and I know what I believe. But there's a law with that too, hey? When you're the Nuyamcha of your people, you're the story keeper, you're the head of the clan, you own that story. You can tell it any way you want. Nobody else can tell your story. It don't belong to them. So that's what I'm saying. I'm going to be here always to support. And like I said, I'd love to sit down with a lot of our tribes and put down our history, what we got from our old people, not what anthropologists wrote, but what our old people had to say about things. So that's the people that follow the potlatch. That's where our foundation is, that way when you follow your culture. And I'm not going to point any fingers at the relatives to the south, but I think they're kind of lacking in that department. Stay away.
Qalakasla Wakawidi. Ikist Wakmako, Qalakasla Gikme. We got also weed to invite Chief Mike Willie of the Mima Weegendi, Namima of the Kwakwaka'wakw.
Qila kasla hamasa lokalakle gigi qabe wiumas. Ola kalamut lakin nokai gahagen la karawala sikukwa kwanala. Umas ik jakta kwakus ketsukwasla kans Liģўiłdax. Just wanted to thank everybody for coming. Wanted to acknowledge the territory where we are doing the work today, the Lampangan people. As it was said earlier, we were supposed to do our business in our Gyukti over here. And just want our friends to know that when we have death, that it's very, very serious. Not to, dance too much in our place of governance. Now, I think, to whom shall I word my speech to? Put your hands up here. Are you government officials? Okay, good, thank you. Well, my brothers over here stole my fuel, right? So. And fuel is pretty expensive today. So, well, I think we're here because we know that there's some territorial issues. And what government needs to recognize, and I understand is hard for them to recognize, is that there are different paradigms. There's the Western way to view things. Lots of this, right? Lots of black and white. Then there's our way, our traditions, which was oral and visual. So those are the key things, the differences. The way we carried ourselves, the way we recorded our history, the way we did our governance was all oral. And the way to do that was to invite people. And now I know today we invite everybody, but back then it was just the people that made decisions, the chiefs and the matriarchs, because our big houses would have been, really, really, really big back in the day. But a typical big house was 40 feet wide by 60 feet long. And so when you invite the chiefs of authority to come or to witness what you're doing, it could be transfer of property. It could be to hand over rights to a family, to a river. It could be many things. But what's important is to know that the host has a lot of history that he wants to show, the family wants to show. Now, you can't just show your own history to your own people. That's just not the way it worked. You had to invite the surrounding tribes, and that's how it functioned. It was said by Umbu Bilskow, you can't potlatch to yourself. You can't give away to yourself. Who are you going to give to? And the reason why I'm saying this is because we're getting into governance now. And why it's equally important to have Kwakwaka'wakw acknowledgement and say and support We're not just chiefs standing here supporting our brothers and sisters in Liǧvíkdax. We were a part of the governing bodies together when we potlatched. We needed them, and they did come up. And they needed us to come down, in which we did. So now what is happening in the western side of things is they're having individual discussions with these different nations which totally undermine the thousands of years of what we did and built upon, our intertribal histories, our intertribal relations. We even have a ranking order. The Liǧvíwdax are in that ranking order. Kwakwaka'wakw, Mamlakla, Numgis, so on and so forth. All 18 tribes. Now, Kwakwaka'wakw, around 24 tribes recognized the Liǧvíwdax. That says something. That's not just nothing. That says something. And I know for a fact that this didn't happen. To have another, so let me back up. We spoke the same language, different dialect, but the same language. What didn't happen is you having a totally different language family sandwiched in between our language when it came to territory. When we practiced our history and our cultures, every single name that you give away is rooted to the land. See, I'm getting into our paradigm, which I don't expect you to understand. It's rooted to the land. So if you have Jawdano names, which I do, that roots me to Kinkum Inlet. Old Seaweed, it roots me to Guilford Island. Now multiply that between all of us. They're not just names. Now we're getting into rights and title. We had a system. Sure, potlatching, sure we danced, but our word for dance is even different. We reenacted, we dramatized our history. And the way we recorded that history was in everybody that showed up. That's oral tradition. There's 809 hours of our history recorded here in the museum. Mungo Martin, Billy Sue, Datsa, Tommy Hunt. Now I know in that history, it didn't include the other language family that we're talking about, the Omoks. It did not include them in there as part of our ranking order. Like I'm saying, it would be out of character to have a different language family sandwiched in with our people owning territory. That just didn't happen. So that is why what we're here for is these discussions need to happen, because you're going to change intertribal history. And now when I look at the children, it would be like committing a crime against our future generation. You're going to change history. I'm trying to get you to understand how it affects us deeply. To have land given away that's to somebody else. Now I could use this in other cases. But this is the flaw in this BC treaty system, that we have to have these discussions. So you should not be able to go forward until these discussions happen, until we all go like this. It's two paradigms colliding. We recognize the Liǧvíwdax. We know that they have a sacred mountain just across Salmon River. And I want my brother here. We have Madzis up in Kinkum. I'm not convinced that that's a Salish word. Okay? So these are the discussions that we need to start having. I feel like Section 35, which is what the government really understands. But to us, traditional law, that's very, very shallow. That gets you to the door of the big house looking in, but that's all it gets you. There's no way you can go inside the big house and understand the ways of our people. So the ways of our people needs to be taken into account when decisions are being made. And it's hard for government officials to understand, which is why we're getting into the Indian Act and banned elections. It's just like a society, banned elections. But it's a way for the government to plug in. That's all it did, because they could not plug in to what went on in the big house. They didn't understand it. But band councils, they do, and they plug in. It functions, and I know that we're there, but I want you to know that us, Liģўiłdax and Kwakwaka'wakw, we have our old traditions and our laws still, and it reflects in our language, and reflects in our dances, and it reflects in our songs. I personally, going way back, named Tlalalitla, has a song that lays out all the different tribes, starting with the Liģўiłdax up. It was a moment in time that was captured by a song. That song is the way he laid out the tribes. It's like how they laid it out in our potlatch books. The interesting things about what my brother talked about, I think it was John Dick, the potlatch book. They're not just books, actually. If anything good that came out of the residential school, if we could say that, was some of our people learned how to write. And that's what happened in 1890s, right up, like for us in Kinkum, 1960 was the last ledger book. They wrote the ranking order of the tribes. They wrote the ranking order of the Namima, and in those Namima, they wrote the ranking order of all the chiefs, and those orders never changed. You can see seats being passed down to the great-grandchildren. And the way it's like chiefs, it's a real low word. Our elders up home, you said you could be a chief of sanitary. But being a Giglame is like being a lord. If we were to try to compare to the crown, something that's been passed down from generation to generation, someone with authority, and that name would be 1,000 old seaweeds before me. I'm the old seaweed of today. And it's like that with all of our chiefs here, who they are of today. And what's happening, this is how we test it, does not fit to what our ancestors laid out for us. So we have to have these discussions. And I would go as far as, let's bring this back to the big house to have these discussions. Let's invite the Comox people to come and explain what's going on and what they're doing. You want to be straight? Let's do it. Because that is what's needed. I know our old people never shied away from that, because that's oral tradition. I mean, you wouldn't be able to keep order if you didn't make corrections right then and there on the spot. And I witnessed that once. His name was Tsabani Madalpi. He got up on a log and he was pointing and was correcting something that happened right then and there. So I stand with you, Liģўiłdax. I believe that we need to come together even more to practice our culture's traditions. See, culture, when you say that, to me, it's not really deep anymore. Our guailelas, we have to say our words. It's much, much deeper. We have to come together and practice our governance and keep on with what was left for us. Daylight Kesla, Hamas Lokulatler, and Wachen Wastum.
Qela Kesla, all seaweed. Ekest Wachtamakos, Qela Kesla, Gilkame. Qela Wamish, Chief Kenwats. Qela.
Before I start and say anything, in our culture we call it ta'atma, and so we say ta'atma mu, Dick family of Songhees. I recognize our dear elder who came and welcomed us has left already. But in our culture, that's what we do, is we shake the family's hand, because ta'atma translates into cane in New Channel. You'll hear somebody say ta'atma, and it translates into cane. And you shake the people's hand to acknowledge that they're grieving, and that this is our little way of holding them up. And before I do or say anything, I want to make sure I do that on behalf of our Hatwaya. So I know she left, but is there somebody from Songhees or somebody that can take this on behalf of the Dick family? But if you could take this and bring it to the family on behalf of us. Chu uklama hwamish, histakshikla tsuma sishat hikamamu, collected chief counselor. Uhukak iksu Matilda Atleo, Tsishaksu Pachlapaksup, Ukutachnu iksu, the late George Watts, Tsisha Mitma, Uhukak Klutzma, Priscilla Sabbaths Watts, Heshkodaksup, Ushkshakleatsu Ha Inchith Siya, Hu Artabatka, Siaksiaka, Hawatakan Sishat. Before I say who I am, I just want to introduce Histakwe, Chief, if you could give a wave. She's Sutil for Tsishat. Means holding on to. She's holding on to our biggest seat in our house. The Tai Ha'ut is what we call them in New Channel. It's the highest ranking seat. And I'm glad one of you mentioned about our chiefs. I always consider it a pleasure when we get to stand with our chiefs, because these are the prime ministers of our countries. These are the premiers of our provinces. They are higher ranking than any elected chief in our community. The elected system is a foreign piece. So when I stand and speak on behalf of Histakwe Chief, that is the head of our government. And just acknowledge that as our brothers and sisters. It's Cliff Atleo Wiccaninish says we're standing amongst royalty. So that's what we say in our culture. These are the heads of our houses. So true. Ushak Shakleatsu, Lakwangan speaking people, Ushak Shakleatsu Hatwaya. Ushak Shakleatsu Likwata people and Hatwaya Masjum. Thank you for having us, the Lakwangan speaking people here, the Songhees, the Esquimalt. Thank you, the Likwata people. Thank you for having us as one of your neighboring nations and your relatives. Again, my name is Wamish Ken Watts. I'm the elected chief counselor here to speak on behalf of our Hatwaya. We come from Tsishat territory, which isn't just Port Alberni. It runs down the Alberni Inlet, much of Barclay Sound and the entire Broken Group Islands on the west coast. Unfortunately, we are here for a very similar reason. Our relatives, I call them our relatives. They're not our adversaries, they're our relatives. And I am actually connected to the Comox. My great-grandfather had children from the Hardy family, actually, and that connects me, actually, to the Comox people. But their treaty and their moving forward as a treaty is an infringement of our title and rights. Claims to the Alberni Valley are struggling. They are not okay with our Hatwaya. But we want to work together. We're not here to fight. I think one of you said we're not here to fight. We're here to resolve. So like was said before, we want to celebrate with our relatives once they complete a treaty, but they want to see it on good terms. Our Hatwaya want to make sure that we can get in the same canoe together and resolve the issues that are before us. I don't call it overlap, because our community and our people, many of the New Channel communities, we don't have shared territory. We have very clear boundaries between our Hahothi, which isn't just territory. It's the land, the air, the water, the people, the animals. And those boundaries were very clear. One was one nation's, and on the other side was the others. There was no shared territory in our culture of Tsishat. And we had those boundaries, including with Comox. And we want to get back to that point in time. So we want to celebrate with them, and we're hopeful that we can resolve. And I just want to share with all of you, and maybe even as I've shared this with Chief Counselor Chris, we don't have the best history with modern treaties in our community. We have another modern treaty. I won't call out those nations and who they are, but land was taken directly from our territory, and we've never been compensated for it. And it's created tension, but we're trying to move beyond that, and we have moved beyond that with some of our relatives. So I just want to share with you all, treaties can have a real impact on your community. It isn't just drawing lines on a map. It gives power, it gives authority, it gives decision-making right in your hau'oli, which is we call territory again, but it goes beyond that. So I want to share with you all, this is more serious than I think people realize, but I believe there's a path forward. And we stand with our Liģwiłdax brothers and sisters in asking for a pause to the provincial government when this hits the House, and the minister, the premier, and all MLAs say we need to get this right. We need to get this right, and we need to ensure that the neighboring nations are okay with the way the Comox and other nations, not just this treaty, but many other treaties across the province, need to go forward with the good spirit and intent that they were intended to. And I'll close with these few points. I talked about hau'oli and our ha'wea here. Wiccaninish Cliff-Atley always says it's a gift. It was a gift from the Creator to look after that hau'oli. But it's a sacred responsibility to do it based on our values of isak, respect, u'athak, taking care of, and Liģўiłdax, that everything is one and interconnected. But it's up to us as elected officials. I always speak about this with Chris. It's up to us to support our ha'wea, our hereditary chiefs, because those are the heads of our governments. It's up to us as elected councils, as Musqueam, as the people of our communities, to stand with our ha'wea, our hereditary chiefs, and support them. So once again, we're asking for the same pause of the Comox Treaty. That's the message for our government officials here. It's not to completely stop it and derail it. It's let's put a pause before the ratification and it hits the House floor. Because we want to resolve the I don't want to call it an overlap issue. I just want to say an issue between our two nations, because we believe and we know what is ours in the Alberni Valley. And we want to move forward in a good way. We want to celebrate with them. And I want to share, there is light at the end of the tunnel for our nations here that are worried. We just resolved with another nation who's moving forward with their treaty. We sat down as nations with our hereditary chiefs, and we shared those lines on a map, unfortunately. We had to do it, but they agreed. And they fixed their lines, and now we're going to be celebrating with them their treaty. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there is possibility. I don't want people to get too scared. You can resolve this, but governments need to slow down. They need to pause and make sure that it's done in a good way so the spirit and intent of that treaty moves forward. So once again, on behalf of Sishat, we stand with our Liģwiłdax people, the ha'wea and the Musqueam from your nations. We're in the same boat right now. We want them to resolve that issue between us. We ask the government to pause it. And I loved the comment earlier, you can't reconcile with the crown unless we've reconciled with ourselves. So let's continue to reconcile ourselves and get back in the same canoe as nations. And thank you everybody for coming out today. On behalf of Histakwe Chief, our hereditary chiefs, thank you for having us here. And I do have a gift. As it was heard earlier, the chiefs in our territory, it's not by how much you own, it's by how much you give away. And we're lucky that we still have a sockeye run in our community. And I know many of our streams are trying to be restored. So the mi'at, back to our tsu'id and our mi'at, the fish in our community, these are from our community of the Tsomas River, one of the last few sockeye runs. So Chris, I don't know which ha'wea this should be going to, but we have some fish from behalf of Histakwe Chief, from her wealth of her territory. We have some fish here for your chiefs. So. True.
Qelakasla wamish ikest watmakus qelakasla gilqame. I wanted to share some words from our uncle Kwakwaka'wakw, Chief Robert Joseph. My dear Chief, I wish I were there with you, but I can't be because of health issues. The reason I write to you is that I want to consider our territorial issues as sacred, and therefore it becomes sacred business. I also want us to view it beyond real estate perspectives. Here goes. Where did it all start for us? It started, of course, with our first ancestors. They all came to be through supernatural transformation at when become sacred sites. The sacred sites became the first markers for territorial boundaries. To that end, they were not divinely created. It's not in our human power to alienate or change any of this new paragraph. This entire tribal nation from east to west, south to north, had one outer perimeter. Inside the outer perimeter are internal perimeters that identify individual plans. Their boundaries cannot be alienated as well. Whenever we compromise these affirmation principles and values, we further impact of colonization and genocide. We should always deal with our lands and territories through that tricial lens that we inherited. So we're slowly getting to the end of our program here, and I wanted to hand the podium back over to Chris to say some final words on behalf of his council, and then I believe we're going to invite some of our Liģwie chiefs to speak to end the evening as well. Well, we're going to invite Kwakwaka'wakw Chief Jerry Jack to say a few words if you would like as well.
Kwakwaka'wakw, I come from the house of Seasot. I'm one of the hereditary chiefs for Moachet Muchlet First Nation. I get frowned upon when I go to meetings sometimes because I always say I'm not a Indian Act chief. Just like my relative Ken was saying, Uncle Cliff says it's a gift from the Creator. You know, I take it very seriously, and I'm really thankful to Chief Roberts for inviting me here today to witness what's going on, because it's really important. I asked my daughter to come with me, Melissa. I said, we're going to be with real heavy-duty chiefs, daughter. I said, I can't be by myself. I'm going to be with royalty, you know. And my dad used to take it really serious, what's going on. You know, my dad taught me that our relatives from Camel River and Cape Mudgeon, we called them Kla'ishinat. Our Muchlet relatives had real close ties with the Asus. The Asus have names, songs, and dances from Muchlet, from Tsakana. That's why I'm here today, because we have close ties with them. We have close ties with Comox. My family got 2 Wei Wai masks from the Frank family. There used to be trails that went to Campbell River, to Kla'ishinat people, to Comox. But we can't find them now because of the lakes that are there, those man-made lakes. All our trails are buried. You know, I thank everybody for coming out today, for supporting. I can't add too much more from what my relative Ken was saying, because to me it's really important. I've taken this really serious, what I do. You know, I don't like talking about Captain Cook, but when you go back in history in 1778, when that man showed up on my shore, that shore belongs to me and my family. That's where my problem started. When he showed up, since 1778, it's more than 156 or 176 years. It's more than that. Now we have to go and prove we owned that before he showed up, and I think it's unfair. I don't know my language. There's a lot of people that say residential schools didn't do anything. My dad got taken away by Mounties in Red Surge and hauled away when he was 5. Our longhouses in Friendly Cove in Yuquat were burned down. But anyway, I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to support our friends and relatives from Camel River, Cape Mudgeon, everybody from there. And thank you for allowing me time to speak. And I just want you to know that when I go to events, I never clap. My grandmother used to say, she called me Sonny. All my aunts and uncles called me Sonny. She said, Sonny, you know, when you go to somewhere and they pray and they ask for the Creator to come in, you never clap like that because you're going to scare them away. So I never do that myself. So I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just explaining why I don't do certain things. And, you know, on behalf of our Ta'iha with Chief McQuina, thank you. On behalf of myself and our Ta'iha with Nathan George from Muchlat, we're amalgamated, you know. But I just want to say klako to everybody coming here today, and thank you for the invite. It means a lot to me. It just makes me want to become more radical. Best days of my life were in 1975 when we blockaded roads and occupied Indian Affairs offices for 76 days and railroad blockades, and I was only 13. Loved it. But anyway, thank you.
Qela Kesla Akwagila. We're going to mix up a little bit at the ending of our program because the Conservative Caucus has asked for some time to address what has been spoken about today. Qela.
Hi, Tsap, to everybody here today. I just wanted to take a second to ask one of the dignitaries or the brothers, just out of respect for the moment, if you could assist me in your way to call 4 witnesses. Normally I'd have my brother here with me so that I could help do the work, and it's just mixing a little bit of our way and Stalo territory so that I know I'm doing our protocols as well, just to call 4 witnesses to witness this response. So it's on the record.
Call their names.
Yeah.
Jason, call their names.
Yeah.
Yakawidi, Qela. Uti Stalis, Qela. Monthly to us, Qela. When monthly? Where Tlachalas, Qela.
Aalia Telsqui, Homok Tesqui, Testalo Nation, Talitzaquah, Homusquium, Samath, Tsaelis, Casta, Scowlitz. My name is Aalia, comes from my great uncle, who was Aya. And I was actually gifted that name when I was born. And I thought it was really important for me to follow some of our protocols mixed with a response and my responsibility as an elected official of the Conservative Caucus. They don't know what they don't know. So it's been a lot of patience I've seen here tonight in the speeches to lay out the powerful teachings and the words and the connections that go all the way down to the roots of the land. And there is one thing I have to say, though. When I heard of the corrections that happen on the floor, we do our work the same way in our homes. Unfortunately, we had to go underground. When we were in hiding, a lot of that was lost. Lost a great, great elder man, my Uncle Shane Point, and so I have to apologize. I'm coming from that. I'm wearing the grief. And some of the things you said, they reminded me of what he's taught and what he spoke all his life. But in recognition of the hierarchies that are here, I should say who my family is. I'm the daughter of Stephen and Gwen Point, Liǧʊiłdax, grandfather Roy Point from Musqueam, grandmother Rena Point Bolton from Samath, and my mom's parents, they're both from Scowlitz and from Chehalis. And so rooted all up in and around the Stalo territory, but our territory, like yours, is broken into 30 Indian Act bands. And so what I was inspired by is to hear that you recognize on a higher level your traditional hierarchies and your chiefs. My brother was our hereditary chief. He was named that after my uncle fell from that position, and they both died because of alcohol. So we're working really hard to get those things back in our territory. My grandmother and my grandfather, they were the last arranged marriage, and that was our last effort to try to keep our ties and our culture alive. That's why she had 10 children. But the real reason I felt it, and my dad taught me this, he said, when you have that feeling, you have to get up and speak. You can't ignore that. When you get that feeling up in your body, it's the spirit telling you have to get up and speak, and you have to share. So when I heard Chacha Nitsa, and it was referred to as the holy ones, Chacha in our language means sacred. I know that because my grandmother taught me that. And Nitsa is the way the Musqueam say Litsa. We say one. That's the number one. And so we can kind of maybe dispute a little bit about the origins of the languages, but I know we had lots of overlaps. Lots of marriages go, even to the island. I tell my son that all the time. I'm like, don't go looking until you come talk to your grandma first. Said, Mom, what family is she from? Yeah, I learned that too. But I think what you've done here today is an incredible testament of truth and history. And you're right, it has to be shared on a wider scale. We've held our culture like this for so long, so scared and so afraid. I talked about us going underground. We still don't invite outsiders into our sacred ceremonies. They're closed and they're just for us. Because that's what our grandparents wanted. They said it was taken at one point, and so we can't risk that. We can't risk it being misconstrued, there being misconception, parts of it being taken away and used improperly. Because those elders that had those gifts, they were real. And then when you talked about another part, those sacred sites, this law that's being written in that building is trying to write what that is, and it's not translating. But I sit and I observe a lot, both in our culture, in our homes, and in that building. And there's something that's starting to align. It's not going to happen overnight. It won't happen easily. But I think it's time that we start sharing more than we have. Because there were so many moments tonight that made sense to me. Just like click, 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 click. All the things I've been taught all my life. And nothing happens by accident. Everything for a reason. Those sacred sites, we have them in Stalo territory. We know exactly the story. Who sits on that mountain? Who rose from that rock? What man was turned to stone because of something he did? And that was Kwakwaka'wakw. And if we were to sit here and recount the whole history of Kwakwaka'wakw, we'd be here for days, like we're used to sitting in the longhouse for days. We don't go by the watch. And I have to tell you, potlatch people, they go long. I sat in potlatch for my first time. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a long, long time. And the women are just sitting there all night. It's really beautiful. But there's so much to learn and so much to share. And I think that another thing my brother Ken said is there's so much more that brings us together. There's so much hope and there's light at the tunnel. I thought that was a perfect way to bring the messages together. And then one of the last things I'll tell you and reflect back to you is we're not that different. We're really not. The things that we want, certainty, clarity, to know what the pathway forward, this paradigm, these two things coming together, that might be a lot of work. I don't know if that's more marriages. I don't know where people want to go with that. But I think the first part is this, exactly this. Invite them in. Take the time to explain the things that are really there. It's hard to do it with words, but you can do it like this. And I'm sorry that we couldn't be in the house where this normally would happen. But I thought it was right for me to get up and to speak on behalf of my caucus. They made time in their schedules. They cleared their calendars. It's not everybody, but we have some of the leaders in our own group. They want to learn. They're good people. And they just don't know what they don't know. But the more that we take time to educate, to speak on the floor, to put the truth out there, transparency, I heard that word. And isn't that right? We had a family that came out with masks, and we were like so happy. They reclaimed their masks. They were all lined up. They were ready to bring, their sons. And then we saw another family walk in the doors, and we were all like, oh. Because they were there to tell them, this is what you're doing wrong. And we all had to sit there and listen and take it in, because it was true. And they had to recognize that. So money went on the floor, speakers were called. That interrupted everything. But they couldn't move forward until that work happened. And they did it in front of everybody, and they called their own witnesses. So I've grown up in two very different worlds. It's always been a little confusing, but there's a lot of clarity brought here tonight. And I can't tell you exactly what will happen in the days to come, because it's going to be a lot of discussions that come out of this. But I can tell you that there's hope, because you've preserved your knowledge, you've preserved your hierarchies, you've preserved your language. And in the language, there's truths and things that don't translate to English quite so well. But I just feel humbled and I feel honored to be here, not just on behalf of my family and my people, but on behalf of the role that I'm trying to serve, the best I can, to bring more knowledge and understanding to places where there isn't. It's very little. But that work has got to continue, and we have to try. And so I'm just in awe. I'm very humbled. Every single one of you that spoke, when you spoke, I almost just was like, whoa! It's just through you. It's that gift. It is who you are. So powerful to see. And I'm proud today. I think our ancestors are proud today. And I can feel my uncle standing with me. So I want to thank all of you. Latsamat, one heart, one mind. Let's get in, paddle together as best we can. And if they don't know how to paddle, then we'll teach them. Heights-up.
Qela kasla namnyot. Ikist wachtmakros qela kasla. Just wanted, before I hand things back over to Chris, and those of you that know me, I'm not much of a huge speaker. Just jumping back to speaking about our potlatch ledgers and the importance of having some of these conversations within our families to start filling these roles. It's been spoken about multiple times this evening that these gigyakme are the rights holders in our territories. And we can only become stronger when everyone is being sat in our house of governance to do the work that we need to do. It's important amongst all of our tribes, not just our Liģwiłdax, but all of our Kwakwaka'wakw tribes, there's many, many, many seats that have sat dormant because of colonization and European disease that decimated our populations. So I wanted to end on that. And so I will hand things over to my brother Chris to say some final words. Him.
Wow. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect in this evening, and I've been blown away. I continue to learn and be amazed by how much I learned just to sit and listen. And everyone that answered the call to come and share is just so, I can't find the words. Usually I'm good with words, they tell me, and I'm speechless. It's going to be different now. It's going to be different now. I believe that. Thank you all so much for being here. I can't say enough on behalf of our Liǩwiłdax people. We're going to change things a bit. You know, we're in this colonial construct of watching the watch. Learn some tricks from facilitators like friends like Dan George from the Wet'suwet'en. And as a facilitator, that my promise to you was to get you out of here by 7. But we're going to go slightly over that. And I'm going to give up my time to our the representative chiefs, just the 4, to represent the 4 clans of the Liǩwiłdax. And I'm going to pass it over to them. And then we'll end the night in a good way. And safe travels to everyone that came here. Thank you to the museum. Thank you to Crystal for all your organization and your work here. You've been a wonderful host. It's been wonderful. And yeah, I'm going to be reflecting on the bus ride up here was quiet. There was tension. I was nervous as heck. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if anyone was going to show up. The bus ride home is going to be much different.
So we'll quickly invite our Liģwiłdax chiefs to say a few short words to close off, and then we'll finalize our evening with what we call Mamalakula, a dance of gratitude to close out our evening. Qeila Yakawidi.
Gela Kestau lessons, Gigikame. Nino Ke. Ahamat Lokulatli. I've had a lot of mixed feelings about today because we're here to talk about the 2 worlds, as one of my brothers had spoke about. And that fine map that the government uses to define our lands. I'm quite grateful that there's people here to hear these words. See, we were drawn on lines 150 years ago today as the Indian Act, forced upon to follow these pieces of paper. That map that's presented by Comox, it does divide 2 different tribes of the Salish and the Kwakwaka'wakw. The fact is there should only be 3 treaties on Vancouver Island, the Kwakwaka'wakw, the Nuchatnut, and the Salish, and allow us to govern our own people amongst our own tribes. We're not nations, we're tribes. 3 tribes of Vancouver Island. And it's up to us to govern ourselves, our lands, and our waterways. That is our ranking order. That is our right, our sovereign right. The documents they presented about Salmon River is not valid. The reason why so many people left is because we were not allowed to create income from that land. But now they're trying to hand peanuts for it to claim that land. That treaty overlaps not just the Wei Wai Kum, the Wei Wai Kay, the Walatsima, Kwika, even as far as the Mumtagila. It's breaking our own laws, and it's forcing the Indian Act over top of our true hereditary rights. That is not our way. We did war long ago, and we would end war with marriage.
And that's why those 3 tribes still existed to present day. So to our friends that have came to hear these words, we do say Kwakwaka'wakw. We say thank you for hearing this, because this is our truths. The words that were spoken before 150 years ago, before that piece of paper was written today, 150 years ago, we did have a law. We did have our boundaries. And that's what makes us so meaningful today. For you to hear those words, to know that we care about the Salish. We care about the Nuu-chah-nulth. And of course, as you can see, we care about our Kwakwaka'wakw people. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, your vulnerability, your humility, because each of those is sacred to us today.
Kwakwaka'wakw yakawidi, awigya otistalis.
Kwakwaka'wakw hamasalukalatle. Kwakwaka'wakw ninoksola. Ninogad. Kwakwaka'wakw gikireme. I just want to express some words of gratitude to those that are here to listen to the words of our chiefs. I want to thank our chiefs for their wise words. Their ability to be able to stand here in support, to validate. I've seen them validate Liģўiłdax in many houses within Kwakwaka'wakw territory. When we talk about our house of governance and our ability to be able to reconcile, move, shift to a place of being able to reconcile with ourselves, lay down a pathway to reconcile with each other, to be able to have respect for one another, to be able to for me to stand here and to say to our chiefs that it isn't enough for me to say that I respect you. I'm going to show you I respect you by how I walk this earth, by how I treat Mother Earth, by how I treat others, by how I treat myself. To make sure that my actions follow what's coming out of my mouth. That is how I'm going to show my chiefs that I respect them. Very grateful to our relatives for allowing us to be in their territory. Very grateful to everybody that came here to show that you care about why we are here. With that, Kwakwaka'wakw. Kwakwaka'wakw.
Kwakwaka'wakw otistalis, awigya weklachalas.
Kwakwaka'wakw, everybody. No Guam, Wekachilas, Wallet, Salmon River, Uyat, Wei Wai Kum Camel River. Thank you to our friends who decided to show up this evening. We appreciate that, and to the ones who haven't, I'm quite disheartened as well, as the elected chief spoke to. I'm not a great speaker, so I apologize. But Gilakasa to Gigigame for to support us and to validate the Walletsama and the Liđʊiwdax people. And Gilakasa, everybody. Thank you.
Gilakasa wekla khalas awigya man tlila.
Gilakasa nugwa amman manthila. Gilakasa gigigime. Gilakasa nunoksala. Ninogad. Gilakasa the government officials who came to listen to our chiefs today discuss a very important issue. I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, but I was part of this process of treaty making when it began. And we've had many, many discussions with the Comox people over time. We sat at the same table together with the Comox people. There was a recognition of where our lands were. You know, when I first got into politics, I recognized where we came from as people, where my territory was, where others' territories were. And the flawed process of drawing a line on a map, whether intentional or not, divided us as peoples in some way or another. I'm nervous about what's going to happen if this process of Comox's treaty comes to completion. You know, our people's decision-making authority in our territories, how does that impact? You know, I know we'll still be making our decisions, but government need to recognize that as well. So I think, you know, today, what happened today, it makes me feel a little better in regards to how we work together as the Liđʊiwdax people, as well as the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And I think, you know, there's opportunity to strengthen ourselves in moving forward. So I just wanted to share those few words. And again, thank you all for coming today to listen to the chiefs. Gilakasa.
So that brings us to the end of our program, and we've switched lanes again, and we're going to sing a different song. We do invite everyone to get up and dance, and we're going to sing a paddle dance to help us on our journey as we head back home this evening. Hayoam.
Kwa la